So I appreciate you, letting me interview you. You're such a beautiful soul. I'm big
Thank you for
on,
asking.
yeah, no, I'm big on wellness. And I think that here in America, family constellations is not a big thing. Um, and I just want people to know that you're out there, but also the modalities out there. So they don't just have to do talk therapy, but it's something much bigger. And you've helped me on my own journey. And I just want to share. I want to share what you offer to the world and get your message out there. And I just want you to introduce yourself and talk a little bit about who you
Okay.
are.
Okay, so my name's Edwina van der Westhuizen. I'm based in Melbourne, Australia. I was originally born in South Africa, but I live in most of my life, Melbourne, Australia. And I guess the modality that you've been speaking about is, family constellations. It's not as well known, you're right, it's not as well known even in Australia or America as it is in Europe. It started with a German man who introduced it. So it's all over Europe, but everywhere else it's a little bit slower. And to give you a little bit of an idea, sometimes people think constellations, they think stars, it's like astrology, but it's not. But similar to the stars have a position that they kind of sit in relation to each other, and that's what we call a constellation. And in a similar way, the family constellations kind of works like that. Like when we think about our family, we have an inner image of where our family is in relation to us. Some may be close, some may be far away, some we've got our back to, some we're looking straight at, but we actually have an inner image of how we are in relation to not just our family, but actually everything. As humans, we are relational beings. We relate to everything. We have a relationship with life, death, health, nature, family, people, everything. We're in relation to everything. And in some cases, that relationship feels good in our body, and in other times, that relationship doesn't feel good in our body. And so I guess this modality is exactly that. It's looking at what is this relationship you've got to even ourself, I guess, and does it serve you, or is it actually kind of stopping you or blocking you?
Right.
And so what's really interesting with this modality is you start from that place. Like you'll actually take what's that inner image inside your head and you'll put it into another form. So that could be that it's a visual representation on the floor. It could be that it's traditionally it was a group process. So we had other people who you would choose and you would position them where you see yourself and those other people in relation to each other. And that's where it starts.
Yeah. The group work is really dynamic. It's interesting to see those people that you pick that are representations of those people in your family and them exhibiting those emotions of those people. It's such a phenom, like people who don't know much about it, it's like, are they faking it? But you also,
Yeah.
you as a participant who is representing somebody, you're in the field, right? It's this dynamic of like, oh, it's not even you. And I think it can potentially scare people. And I think that when you start working on your family, on your system, on yourself, you start to believe and you start to see these changes, which is pretty dynamic.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's amazing because I'm not sure how people in America who are doing it, but I keep it really blind, as in the people don't know anything at all. I talk to the person before the constellation, before the workshop. So I find out what they want to look at there, and then we kind of figure out what we're going to start with. And to the degree where we don't even name them, I call them 1 and 2 and 3. So it's really blind because
Oh,
I
wow.
don't want people to get their heads in the way. Yeah, because as humans, we're so attached to story.
Of
So if
course.
someone's sitting there and saying, my parents are, an angry, abusive, whatever person or something like that. And we've now heard that story. If we're then asked to represent, let's say, that person, we've got this preconceived idea about what we just heard.
Right.
And I want to bypass that, because usually underneath anger, there's other emotions. And if we kind of go, right, I have to be this angry person, whatever, because that's what I heard, we don't get to what's really going on. And so
Right.
I kind of help everybody by going, you know what? You don't know. You've got no idea what's going on here. You don't even know which one of you is representing the client that's sitting here.
Right.
But the client knows, and I know. And so the client's sitting there almost like watching and going, how is this possible? They don't know who they are. They don't know which one's me. They don't know what I'm
Right.
looking at. Yet they're saying words out of their mouth that I could tell you that my father or my mother said a month ago.
Yes.
Like, how is that possible? Well, that's
Right.
exactly the dynamic that goes on.
Yeah.
How is that possible? But what's also phenomenal about that is sometimes, as we, let's say, maybe we start with, as an easy example, mum, dad, and the client, but we might get bigger. We might bring in grandparents or things like that. And then what happens is each of them are saying what they're feeling. Sometimes it can be such a light bulb moment for the client, because they go, wow, grandma, grandfather, mum, dad, all these people are feeling different feelings, but yet I feel all of them in my body. No wonder it's so overwhelming in here.
Right.
Like, it just is like, wow, like I'm feeling all of this in one little body, and
Right.
here I'm seeing that actually it belongs to, 5, 6 different people. It's like, yeah, it's mind-blowing for people.
Yeah. It makes sense. It just when you do the work, it makes sense. It's like, oh, okay. Well, I could see, sometimes the way I explain it is like, all right, think about if intelligence gets passed down, right? Or looks gets passed down, why won't experiences or those things get passed down to generation? And people are like, oh, that makes sense. And I'm like, yeah. So you could be the carrier of that. You could be, depending on the dynamics in your family. And so, when people start thinking about that, it's like, oh, okay.
And you know what? There's actually science that's proven it now. So there's something called epigenetics,
Yes.
which is a science. It's proven
Right.
that when your grandmother was pregnant with your mother, 5 months in, your mother had all of her eggs, and one
Right.
of them was you. So if grandma's experiencing, so I actually had this as a real example from a client. I'll tell you, I always use the same scenario. So, and I said, so imagine grandma's pregnant with your mother or your father. It could be either, because he's got some of his sperm. Like, imagine your grandmother's pregnant, and then all of a sudden, grandfather dies in an accident. And I had this client who said, that's actually what happened. And what she came with was, when she said she was in a happy marriage, when she got pregnant, all of a sudden she thought her husband was having an affair. He was going to leave her. They started fighting. She said it's just been awful ever since. And I told her that story, and she said, oh, my grandfather did actually die when my grandmother was pregnant. And I said, so maybe the fear that you had that your husband was going to leave when you were pregnant is actually your grandmother's, because he did actually leave.
Right.
But he didn't have an affair. He died.
Yeah.
And she, like the whole thing changed. Her relationship just went back to normal. She stopped thinking he was going to leave, and she realized that her fears were all her grandmother's.
Yes. So, can you tell me a little bit about your journey into family constellations, a little bit about just navigating? So, you talked about you were born in South Africa, now you're in Australia. So, however much you want to share, I think your story is important. How did you come into this work?
Well, I'd say Constellations found me.
Okay.
I'd never heard of it before. I was at a networking event. I was so I guess my career started in fashion, then it moved into training. Then I wanted to train something that wasn't just fashion related. I always believed in the human potential. I then started studying coaching, and and my husband and I have got a coaching and training business. And we were at a networking event, and there was a door prize. Everyone gets a little ticket, little number, and you can win a door prize. And someone came up and said the door prize was you can come along as a representative for a constellation, and she explained a little bit about it. I didn't fully understand what she meant. I didn't win the door prize, but I thought I'm going to go along and see what this is about. And again, I still hadn't fully grasped what this was, but I can still remember the first constellation. So I'm sitting in a group. The lady was Russian, and I mean, geography was not my topics at school, so I didn't really know anything about history. So a Russian lady came up and she said, I feel like I can't fully live my purpose. Like I just can't, something's blocking me. And so I don't know I can't remember what they started with, but obviously the client and maybe her purpose, I don't know what happened. But I know at one point the facilitator said to me, can you just come in and just lay on the ground there? So I lay on the ground, and all of a sudden, in a split second, I was shaking, I was crying. I felt like I was about 9 years old. I was going to die. I was just like, I did not know what happened to me. I couldn't really fully hear what everyone else was saying, but later on, she got me to stand up and go over to this particular person. And when I looked at them, it was just like, I was in tears, and I was like, oh, I've been looking for you everywhere. And like, it was like an out of body experience. And then after I said to her, and then I sat back in my chair and I was back to me. And I was like, what just happened there? What happened? And it was something about the White Russians and the Red Russians. And I don't really understand what that is, but something about the White Russians and the Red Russians. And I think I was one of the people who was representing some of the people who had died in the war from this person's family. And so what happened was, at an unconscious level, she had like a survivor guilt that a whole lot of people in her family died. And so therefore she couldn't fully live and get on with her life because she had this kind of like survivor guilt. But it was phenomenal, like that experience. And then I went, nah, that's got to be just a random thing. So I kept going to workshops, and every single time I had no idea what the person was talking about, and I'd step in and I'd feel these feelings, and it was just amazing. And then I thought, nah, like it's got to be something else, gotta. So then and I was telling my husband, and he's even more skeptical than me, and he came along and he goes, okay, so he did one. I'm his third wife. And he came along and said, okay, and it was kind of newish in our relationship. And so he said, right, I'm going to do one around clearing anything from my previous relationships. So he didn't say anything. He just said, Edwina's my third wife. I want to clear anything. So she said, okay, choose someone for the first wife, second wife, and then I came in later. He chose two people, and literally that's all he said. I want to clear something, whatever's in the way between our relationship. Pick someone for the first wife, pick someone for the second wife. It was unbelievable. The person who was the first wife was exactly like his first wife. Oh. The person who was his second wife was exactly like his second wife. So his first wife said she still loved him, even though she was the one who broke it off, and she was devastated that he moved on, and she wanted him back, and all this sort of, even though she broke it off, but there was, anyway, she was Jewish, he wasn't. There was a whole lot of other dynamics that came in the way. But she'd never really had a serious relationship up until that point, and they were separated 4 years. After that constellation, she got a partner that was a long-standing partner to this day. She didn't know we were doing it, obviously, because he wasn't talking. Yeah, and then the other person who was his second wife was German, and she was quite violent. And the person in the constellation was like that. She was accusing him. She was saying it's all your fault. And the facilitator was like, just hold back, because she was almost ready to punch him out. And the facilitator was like, no, just back off, just like trying to calm her down. And we said, no, actually, this is exactly how it is.
Wow.
And the facilitator's husband represented my husband. So he's like a seasoned facilitator. And he was standing there at one moment when the second wife was kind of going at him. And he said, just hang on a minute. I need to sit down for a minute. It feels like someone's just ripped my heart out of my chest. And literally 2 months earlier when my husband was explaining to me about his second wife. That's exactly the words he said. And from that moment on, we were hooked. We were hooked. We were like, what is this thing? And I just went to everything possible. And then that was in 2003.
Oh, wow.
And I don't know how many constellations we did. And then by 2009, this lady did her first training, and I was like, I think the first one to sign up. And I'm still to this day fascinated by the work. Still to this day. Families are fascinating. And the entanglements and the ways that we connect to our system, even if detrimental to us, is phenomenal.
Yeah. And so
sorry, that was a long answer to a short
story. No, you're constantly growing and expanding. Yes, family constellations and entanglement, it's just, the more you grow, like what I've seen, the more I grow as a person, the more like space that I'm like, oh, I want to learn this, or I want to be able to bring it to this person. How do you dance with that information? Like, how do you continue to expand? Like, what kind of piques your interest? Like, where are you right now, and how are you expanding?
You're absolutely right, and because I teach it as well. I started teaching it in 2020 in COVID. I was going to teach it, and then it ended up being partly online because of COVID. But what I found is it doesn't take away from anything else anyone has done. Yeah. It just is the foundation that almost brings everything together, which is what I love about it. Because even though a whole lot of people will learn it the same way, they will then make it their own and integrate it into whatever they're doing. So I've had psychologists, counselors, kinesiologists, hypnotherapists, all sorts of different people who have then used it in their own ways with the work. And so I guess first of all, it found me when I went to that networking thing. And then through the work, I've started discovering all these secrets in my system. And it was like, all right, now it makes sense. So I had a fear of pregnancy. When I was little, from a little child, and everyone else was like having dolls and saying, oh, I'm going to have all these, I'm going to be a mum. I was like, no way, I am not getting pregnant. There was such a fear in my body. Didn't make any sense. But then later, and I think I was maybe in my 40s by that stage, I found out that my mum had an abortion just before me and nearly died. And then it wasn't until 2017 that my dad passed away, and my mum told my husband that she was in a coma for 5 days when I was born. Before that, every time I asked about my birth, nothing was said. And it was like, oh, it's not my fear, it's her fear. So had I figured that out earlier, my life may have gone down a different path. I still raised my stepchildren, so I kind of was a mother in a different way, but I didn't have to go through the pregnancy part, which was the fear. And so all of that just kept my journey going, because then I was like, now there's space to look at other things. Now I can actually help other people. Now I can keep exploring what this is. And because I had that, trust in people's human potential, I then went and did a master's in counselling. I'm looking at, and the thing with me is I want things that work and things that work fast, because I'm like, I don't have time. Like, I'm 55. I don't have time to muck around and do 30 years of therapy. I just don't have time.
No,
I actually don't think we have time as a planet to be doing slow processes. Yeah. And I really believe that when someone's ready, 90% of the work's done.
Right.
But getting to that point, is the journey. But so I'm always looking for things that work fast. So I think I've tried everything under the sun, because I will just try something, and if it works, I'll try it again. And if I'm kind of like that, that must have been a one-off. I'll try it again. And if it works, and then I'll send my husband, because he's even more skeptical, and then I'll say, you go try it, and then or I'll try it on him, and then if it works and it works fast, then I bring it into my toolkit, or I'll find out more about it. So I'm continually, just wanting to explore things. So while talk therapy is great,
Yeah.
I actually think that we're in this body and we need to recognize that our body's talking to us all the time. So I'm very interested in somatic, like body-based work,
Yeah.
reading the body, noticing what the body's saying at an unconscious level. I work with trauma. So, that's very much stuck in the body. And so that's kind of where I'm focused on, and I keep doing my own work. So I've actually got someone who's in Canada and we catch up regularly and do swaps. So 1 week she'll do a session with me, 1 week I'll do a session with her,
Right.
and we continue to work on our own stuff. Because I think you have to. If you're working with other people, you have to keep doing your own stuff.
Right.
If you can, to be able to work with other people.
Yeah. No, I do agree. I know how I came into family constellations. Somebody was talking about the mother wound, and I was following them on Instagram, and I was like, what is this? And I started like searching for people who are in the States, and I couldn't find anybody. And then I like found you, I found 2 other people, and I was like, okay, so let me try this. But, I think that it's really important. The way I look at talk therapy as a therapist is doing these other modalities. We talked about root cause therapy. You've introduced that to me, and family constellations is that you use the talk therapy after the fact to be able to
Exactly.
process. Talk therapy, we can process things, but that's in your head. What about your body? Your body's the one who has to navigate in this world, and your body needs to have a release. And I think that's really important. And so, like you're like, hey, I'm trying to put things, if it works, I'll put it in my toolkit, right? So depending on what client comes, you create the plan for them to say, hey, let's walk down this path. I think this is what you need, And so it's really important. So which brings me to the next question is kind of, when somebody's entering this, I call it a wellness journey or healing journey. I think that there's these cliche words, right? And around the world, around self-care, around healing, but somebody's new. What would you recommend? What would be something, how family constellations came to you, right? What if somebody said, hey, I'm ready? What advice or what tips would you give them? Just to kind of start.
So the fact that they're even saying they're ready is a great start.
Okay.
And then the next thing I would say is trust your body, like trust your instinct. Because I really believe that while there's so many therapists and things out there, you have to find someone that you connect with.
Right.
That is one of the most important things, because at the end of the day, our body, our journey on this, wellness journey, we need to feel like safe and that someone gets us.
Right.
That, they can hold that container for us when we want to move through something. And I really believe if you've got a therapist who can hold that container, you can move through anything. So check them out, talk to them, go, do a discovery call with them and ask them whatever questions you want to. And as you're talking to them, feel how your body responds. Does your body give you a yes, or does it go, hell no? And listen to it. And then once you do that, I think you're partway there.
I love that. So this is, I'm gonna pick your brain a little bit, right? How do you know when your body's a yes or no? Because some people are like, what? Yeah. So
I actually teach this to people. So it's easier when you're standing, because I don't know, it just is easier. So I say to people, stand up, and then say to your body, and anyone who's listening can actually stand up and do this. Ask your body to show you yes, and just notice what happens. So some people will rock forward. Some people will just take a big, deep breath. Some people will, lots of different things happen. So just ask your body to show you yes. And if you don't get anything, say, show me even louder. Show me a yes. And then, if you get something, you might have someone who is in your space and you can ask them to notice if, anything's, your body's moving or something like that. And then you might ask your body, show me a no. And then you notice what happens. Some people, again, rock back. Some people have had kind of almost click, they can feel their jaw clenching and things like that. Like it's fascinating, all different ways, but your body knows. And so I'll get them to try it a few times, and then I'll say, okay, now say, my name's Marsha, and then see if your body gives you a yes or a no, and then say, oh, my name's Fred, and see if your body gives you a yes or a no. So try it with yes, no questions, really simple ones, and start to listen to the wisdom of your body. As I said, it's easier when you're standing, but then you can actually do it when you're sitting as well. And as you're listening more, you'll be able to get that feeling. Some people have got a yes and they get like a tingle through their body. So whatever it is. So ask your body. Once you know your yes and your no, you have got so much power over your whole life. Not that you didn't before, but even more so, to the degree that you can then go anywhere. Like I went to the shopping centre and I was trying to figure out what foods I like, and I'll pick up this food and I'll ask my body this one and I'll get a yes or a no. This food, yes or a no. And you can then, you're asking about the therapist you want to work with. Do I get a yes or a no? Asking about anything. Do I get a yes or a no? And sometimes if you get like a nothing, it may be that your question's not clear enough.
Right.
So when you start doing that, the clarity of your yes and your no and the way that you hear your body and listen to your body will get stronger. You just got to start somewhere, and that way you are then, you're the captain of your own ship.
Yeah.
And then you check, is this person the right person to work for me?
Yes. Yeah. No, that's one thing that I love about you is that your discovery call, right? I will tell my clients like, hey, here's 3 people, but Edwina has a discovery call. If you don't know what it is, you can go talk to her and she can offer you can talk to a real person about where you at and how and what she feels and what you feel. I think that that's what I love about the discovery call that you have. I know other people don't have that. And I love that offer that you have. I think it's really important for somebody who's new, right? And I think we're in a world, or I know in America, in the United States, they talk about therapy, they talk about healing, but sometimes brown and black people, it's more of nothing's wrong with me, or the fear of some unknown that something is wrong, or they're crazy, or, and so I think the discovery call is really an opportunity to really talk to somebody one-on-one, and nobody else needs to know, like this. And
yeah.
I really,
sorry, keep going.
no, go ahead. I'm finished. Yeah.
And well, the thing with that too is also if I'm not the fit for that person, like I'll just go straight up, hey, it's not me, but
Yes.
how about try this person or that person? So as a therapist, it is just as much me being able to, or any therapist being able to say, yeah, no, we're not a fit.
Right.
Which is, no big deal for anybody. It's just that we're not a fit. So if I try to work with you and I know straight up we're not a fit, it's just going to be like, banging heads. It's just going to be wasting everybody's time and everybody's money. So, I think it's just as much for me to be able to say, yeah, do I feel like I can connect with this person?
Yes. No. Is there any I know you did the muscle testing you gave them. Is there anything you would want somebody to take away from this talk besides all the gems you've already given them? Is there anything else that you would want?
Just to know that the way I look at it is nothing's wrong. Nobody's wrong. There's nothing wrong with us. Like whenever someone comes, and it doesn't matter what story they tell me, and believe me, I've probably heard them all. It doesn't matter what people tell me. I often think, but what happened to them? Like, because trauma is not the event that happened. It's what happened inside of you as a result of that event. And, I work in a primary school. What do you call it? The little people at school. What do you call it?
It's
primary? Okay. Yeah. Primary. I know you call it different when it gets bigger. But yeah, so
everybody would know.
Okay. Okay. So I work at a primary school and I'm a counsellor there at the primary school. And, so often they look at the little kids, this naughty child, this, child who, whatever, naughty child is usually how they say it. But I look at it and go, yeah, but what happened to them?
Right.
Because, they have no agency over the fact that their parents are divorced and fighting, and maybe there's abuse and they're witnessing it and whatever. So, of course, they're going to take that out somewhere
Right.
at school. And if no one actually sees them as not a naughty child, but actually sees their pain, they just turn into an adult who's still traumatized. And so when I look at this stuff, I think, well, but what happened?
Right.
Like, it doesn't matter what people say. It's like, but what happened?
Yeah.
Who was there for you? Who listened to you? And that goes just as much for your parents. So if someone says my parents are this, that, and the other thing, I'm thinking, but what happened to them?
Right.
What was it like for them growing up? Because when we then use that kind of systemic lens, which is the constellations, and we realize that this stuff can be generational, and war plays a massive part in that because, young kids, 16, 17, 18, went to war,
Right.
who were still, their brain hasn't even fully developed. They went to war and they killed other people. That's not a normal human act.
Exactly.
And then we didn't understand PTSD. We didn't understand the impact that had on them when they came back. And then we expected them to come back and raise a family and just act normally. And then we wonder why there's so much male, anger at the moment, let alone what the, institutions have done with,
Right.
Oh, yeah. Anyway, I'm not gonna get on my soapbox about it. But you know what I mean? There's so much that if we just kept asking that question, but what happened to them?
Right.
We can all come to a place of compassion, and from there we can do something. It doesn't mean that we excuse bad behaviour. I'm not saying that.
Yeah.
But we can have a little bit of compassion to go, okay, maybe we all need to heal. Maybe we all need to kind of rise beyond this blaming each other and find a different way that we connect.
Yes. Yes, yes, yes. So where can the audience find you?
So my website is relationshipconstellations.com. You might need to type that somewhere so that
I'm going to put it up there. I'm going to put it,
and yeah, I'm based in Australia, but if you can't find a time that works for you, just message me and I'll work it out, just because I kind of put certain times on there, but I'm always flexible to work with a time zone. So just message me and say I'm in such and such a place and can we connect, and then I'll kind of figure out what the time difference is and find a way to connect with you.
Okay. So she is telling the truth because we have worked together and we will find a time. But I thank you for sharing your gifts today, allowing me to interview you. You're such a bright light and you have so much knowledge, and just working with you and, in my own experience, and I want the world to know you're out there. And so I appreciate you. I really do.
Well, thank you so much. And thank you for asking me to join you in this space.
I appreciate it.
One day I'll get to America.
Oh, and I just came from Africa. So I went to Dakar and I was thinking, I am going to go see Edwina soon.
Yes. Come in the summer.
Okay. But the summer, is the summer
we're in summer. We're getting into summer now. So
okay.
yeah. Right. So your winter is our summer.
Okay.